head into our talk with Trent, check out Hiretuality, our upcoming virtual event packed with new features to kick off 2021. Find the link in the description, and let's get back to the show.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Coffee with Hiretual, the Recruiting Utopia, where AI is a friend and not a foe. Pretty interesting, huh? So on this week's episode, we'll be continuing our conversation with Trent Cotton, the Director of Talent Acquisition at BBVA. So I really hope you watched last week's episode because that's where our conversation with Trent started. In last week's episode, we talked about how him and his team uses sprint recruiting to overcome the pitfalls of traditional recruiting and how that helps his team drive efficiency. On this week's episode, we're going a little bit deeper into that concept by learning about the tools that Trent uses to really help him reach his goals. So what is Trent's Recruiting Utopia? What does it look like? What is the ideal future of recruitment that Trent's looking forward to? Stay tuned to the rest of the episode to find out. I love how you ended on that idea that, why would people not want to implement it? And that's actually a big question. I mean, Hiretual being an AI recruiting solution as well, that's usually the biggest question we come across. And I know we had you on Skill Hack, one of our previous virtual events, to talk a little bit more about AI and machine learning. And we had those similar questions coming in, which I guess I'm going to address again in this episode. The common misconception that you can't bring the human element back to recruiting with AI recruitment technology, which is really funny considering what you just said was, AI helping you do more, helping you be more human, helping you be that talent consultant, being that career consultant. So what do you think about this misconception? Do you think AI can support recruiters on their journey to be more human, to be more intentional with their day-to-day tasks as compared to, worrying about those administrative tasks and running around juggling all these different things?
Oh, definitely, definitely. So let's use Hiretual as an example. If I'm developing talent pipelines, which is something that we now have capacity to be able to do, the the ability to have AI go in and constantly run that search and engage those candidates, and I can say, all right, well, let me send an automated email or a search, excuse me, what do you call it? An email sequence. There we go. An email sequence. And I don't have to worry about putting a little post-it note to remind myself to go and check with all of those candidates that I reached out to, and to have them all in one space and all of the analytics. That's the other thing that I think that recruiters are missing out on. They look at the AI as going, okay, this is going to replace me. But how cool would it be to have something that comes and tells you, of the 15 developers that you hired, here is kind of a nice persona of what they look for. And then I can take that persona to the hiring manager and say, do you agree with this? And if they do, then there's our search strategy. We don't have to do an intake the next time a developer position comes open. We've got our playbook, and we're using AI to constantly go out and source those candidates. And we use our free time to go and engage them, whether we have a position open or not. So I guess to me, it just doesn't register whenever people go, AI is going to replace the human touch. No, it's going to allow me to do what I really enjoy doing, which is develop and manage a talent portfolio. With COVID and everything, now we're talking for a lot of companies, we're talking about hiring without borders. So they don't have these, your talent assets, they don't have to come in. And so it's going to completely open up a new talent pool that economically I think is going to work out better for companies, because we can go out into some of these areas. Hiring a developer in New York is not going to be it will be more costly than hiring one in North Dakota. But the one in North Dakota may just be just as great, if not even better, than someone that you can find in your own backyard. Those AI tools are going to become even more important. I know that we've leveraged Hiretual to kind of spread out and go, okay, this is the competency that we need. Where is this talent from a metro area, if and when we decide to let people go back into the office? And so I think that now the ability with AI and machine learning and tools like Hiretual and others, that we can start becoming not just talent advisors, but leading with the data. Rather than, going to your manager and say, where do you think these people are? Chicago. Okay, well, we look in Chicago, there's 5. But then we look down in Minneapolis and there are 15 and they're below our budget. And they're high quality. They're working with one of our competitors. I think we're going to see recruiters, the smart recruiters, use more of the tools that are out there and available to be able to transform into the talent consultants that all of us want to. Either that, or, I mean, I hate to sound harsh, but those that don't want to embrace this, they're going to make themselves irrelevant in the next probably 3 to 5 years. And I don't like to be irrelevant. I like to be cutting edge. So I'm always going to be, I'm always going to be out there going, well, let's try this, let's try that. And it drives my team, and I'm sure it drives my client crazy. But to me, I always want to find what's out there, what's new, and what can help us to maximize that experience for both our manager and for our candidate.
I want to go back to that recruiting utopia that you mentioned. Your recruiting utopia. What do you think that recruiting utopia ideally would look like over the next 12 months, considering the rate of digital transformation and how inevitable it is going to be for recruiters in 2021?
All right, so let's just go ahead and put a couple of assumptions in there for us to be able to meet that recruiting utopia. So we have an AI that comes in on the front side that does exactly what I talked about earlier. It goes and it parses out things with the resume, and it begins the sourcing, and it does preliminary interviews that the recruiters have an ability to go in and help draft and provide a grading system. And then on the back end, once the candidate says, I'm done, that AI picks back up and says, hey, congratulations. Let me track you down for all your paperwork. And they engage them on the back end. So my recruiting utopia is that I have a senior level job that I'm responsible for sourcing. Of course, I'm never going to let go of sourcing. I love it. To me, it's the thrill to kill. So I'm going to do it, but I also have got my little AI partner over here that's re-engaging talent that may have already applied. It's looking for passive candidates that maybe I don't think I need to be looking for. And it's also engaging with maybe potential internals who might be a good fit as well. So that's on a Monday. I get the job. On Tuesday, I come in and I've already told my AI, hey, I like to interview in the afternoon. I'm not really a morning person. So I look at my schedule on Tuesday afternoon. I've got 5 qualified candidates that are already booked. So being a good recruiter, I go in and I kind of look at their profile rather than just looking at their resume and maybe looking at their LinkedIn. I've now got a 360 view because they've answered all of these questions, and the AI has rated them against some of the others. Rated them against the job, but also rated them against others in the pool. Now, the real fun part for me is that those 5 qualified candidates, let's say I just fell in love with all 5 of them. I can now, within 24 hours, send something over to a hiring manager and say, here's the resume. Here is the ranking that the AI came up with. Here's the answers to the AI, and here's my executive summary. To me, I mean, as a former hiring manager, I would have just that would have been great reading material for me that night. But then, and if we put this in together with Sprint, I've hit my 5 on my top priority. I'm doing 25% of the work that I do now. And so that to me is the recruiting utopia. I can totally go on and on and on about it. I mean, I have to remind myself whenever I start talking about slow down, because I get so excited that to me, this is a pivot point for us, because I think the more that we leverage these new tools that are coming out, the better position we're going to be to say, okay, CEO, Mr. and Mrs. CEO, you have 5 profit targets that you want to hit. My job is to make sure that I have the talent in my back pocket to help you pull those levers. And I think that is, we're on the tipping point. But I think that's really going to be when people start looking at recruiters and going, wow, they're invaluable and not just they're a necessary evil.